So it is September. Tomorrow is September 22nd, 2024, and we have the equinox, the fall equinox. So let's see what's happening here with respect to astronomy and how it is changing seasons in on our planet, but also how it influences other aspects of either wind movement, but also how it changes how photosynthesis happen, and it'll even show you how carbon the carbon content of the atmosphere has a variation depending on the time of the year. So let's double check and see what kind of fun things we're going to learn today. So tomorrow, Sunday, September 22nd, 2024, we have our fall equinox. So what does it mean? And let's see if we can better understand what is happening tomorrow. Second, how it can affect season, but also how it changes global circulation of atmosphere, and also how it dictates photosynthesis on our planet, and it changes the carbon dioxide content in the atmosphere. You'll see lots of good fun. So here we have an example where we have our sun here, we have our planet. Our planet here is at about 150 million kilometers from the sun, and it is having a rotation at an inclination of about 23.5 degrees. So here we have the planet that rotates to give us nights and days, but we also have here in the orbit around the sun that give us the seasons that we are setting our lives with. So let's see what's happening here. So first of all, if we have the fall equinox here, the fall equinox is at an inclination, but the equator right here is more or less at the same distance from the sun, and therefore we have days and nights that have similar lengths. Now here we have the planet that will go here in the winter, and then here on the other side we have what we call the spring equinox, and the spring equinox is when you have the Earth on the other side, close to the Earth, and the equator is also at a constant distance. So in the spring and the fall, we have fairly even temperature, and that is a change of seasons. And then we have the planet that goes to the summer, and then we have here the summer on the northern hemisphere. And this is what we're ending right now, knowing that if you live in the southern hemisphere, it is the opposite. So here in the northern hemisphere, we have the summer, whereas in the southern hemisphere, we have the winter. And in our winter, you have your summer. So let's see if we can make sense of that. Let's see the next picture that works nicely. So this will be, let's see if I can put it, can we see the four of them? Perfect. So here you have, this is where we're at right now. And I think that's as big as I can put it this time. Let's see if I can make it bigger just for fun. There you go. So here we have the fall equinox, and we have the equator right here that is a set distance. What will happen in the coming months? Our Earth will come right here. You'll see the distance is getting further, but here on the northern hemisphere, it's going to get colder. So let's see how it goes. So here we have the sun that is on its orbit. We see the sun has its most direct rays on the southern hemisphere. And here on the northern hemisphere, we have energy that is not in the direct direction. So what happens here is we have summer in the southern hemisphere and winter on the northern hemisphere. And that's when we have the winter coming along. As the Earth is going here towards the spring equinox, we have here a temperate temperature because the equator is more or less at the same distance, and days and nights have the same lengths. When we have the Earth that goes on the other side, as I mentioned earlier, the sun rays will get much closer. And even though we may be further from the sun, because the days are longer, we end up with our summer season. And here we go back to our fall equinox. Now, interestingly enough, in Canada, we have migrant workers. So what does that mean? So here, if you look in our December month as we're coming, we have the summer in the southern hemisphere. So we have farmers that will take care of their farms, their animals, and so on. But when it is their winter in our summer, they are individuals that are very capable, that are in their low season. And that's why they come to the northern hemisphere to work for the summer. So during that time, they can earn money, and then when our season ends, their summer season will start. So here it works nicely, and it's a great cooperation to maximize people working, but also making sure that our farms, fruits, vegetables are being cared for, and then we can harvest everything as we need at the end of the summer. Now, what's interesting with this change here and how these are working, we know that the sun is the heat source for our planet. So let's see if I can show you the global circulation of the atmosphere on Earth. Now, this is one of my favorite video on YouTube, and I'll share with you why. So I'm going to start this one here. So here what we have the map of Earth. And you could see right here in the middle, we have the equator. And we have here, it seems to be a bit more, it seems that there's more information and more dust or something in the atmosphere. And the reason for that is that because we are along the equator, this is where the most evaporation happens. It's the most evaporation. So here you could see we have clouds along the equator. We can see here as the video is progressing that we have the dates here that are changing. So here we are in February, and we're going to go until December. Now here you notice that there's a trend from east to west. So they're here like a western trend here. So here we call them the trade wind. So trade winds go from east to west, and you're going to see how this happens. It is from the fact that our Earth is rotating. So if we have this Earth right here, we have here with the inclination, and we have a rotation that is like this. So what happened here, we have a solid Earth, well, a soil, ground, and water turning one way, and we have a much less dense gas layer, which is our atmosphere. So Earth is rotating, and the atmosphere is moving due to the fact that it's dragged by the friction of the surface. So here there's a movement of the Earth from east going this way. And if you look on the map I showed you, let's see if we can look at it again. So you could see that if the Earth is moving this way from west to east, then the atmosphere is dragged, or there's an apparent movement from east to west. So that's beautiful this way. Now, what's interesting as well is that this is the equator, but our Earth is a sphere. That means that as we have air going up in the atmosphere, it cannot go up forever. Gravity keeps our layer of atmosphere fairly thin. So we have movement towards north and towards south hemisphere. So what happened here, we have wind swirls that are going this way, and humans are using those as well. So for example, if you're in Toronto right here and you decide to go to London or Paris, you'll notice that it might take you 6.5 hours, 6 hours and 45 minutes to go here. However, once you want to come back, then you might notice that it's not going to take 6.5 hours. It might take up to 8 hours to come back, because when you come back here, you're going against the wind. So the wind in the atmosphere are making a difference. Now, you have to keep in mind that if we have seasons, that means that the northern hemisphere sometimes is closer to the sun when it's the summer. And when it's the winter, then there's less energy coming down here. So it does have effect how plants are growing on both hemispheres. So let's see if I can see the next video. You'll see about the carbon content. So here we are, September 21st right now. So this next video, it's a year, like a year in the life of Earth. That was done in 2006, but it gives us a good idea of how carbon dioxide gas composition is changing in the atmosphere. So I'm going to let it go at this time. So here you could see this is the end of the summer. We have like a light gray colors. When it turns into blue, that means that there's more carbon dioxide. And when it turns into reddish corners, that means that there's more carbon dioxide. So here, this is the end of the summer, and therefore we have a lot of photosynthesis on the north part, less carbon dioxide. However, we're going into October. So what happens is it's the end of the season, and you're going to see how there's a change here in that year, and there's more and more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere right here. And you're going to say, why is that happening? is that here we have the United States, which is very active with their manufacturing um, industry. We have Europe here, we have Northern Africa, we also have here in China lots of industries happening here creating carbon dioxide. We no longer have the summer with the photosynthesis to absorb the carbon dioxide, so it is accumulating in the atmosphere. Now, I'm not saying here that's the end of the world, it's part of a cycle. So we'll see how it goes. So we are in October. Let's continue a little bit. And you will notice that as November comes in and then you get to December, you'll see how much more there are, because we have here the equator and then we have the air in the northern hemisphere that's more or less stays together and doesn't necessarily mix very much with the southern hemisphere. And here you can see as we get into November, this is getting into the summer for South America. Here we have here the southern tip of Africa, Australia, Indonesia, and so on. So it's kind of interesting to see how it goes. So let's go to see if I can go into January here and see what happens. So here we are in January. It's in the winter. So we know that in the northern hemisphere, there's no plants outside, no photosynthesis. So there's an increase in carbon dioxide content. If you can see here in South America, see it looks like a heartbeat. The jungle here of Africa, the jungle here of Indonesia, southern part of Indonesia. See how during the day, the carbon dioxide decreases, during the night, it increases. It's all about absorption of CO2 from the atmosphere. Now here you have a red line here. Often there are forest fires in this area, and that creates this situation. So this is Mars right here. So what's interesting is that we are getting closer to the spring in the northern part of North America. So you can see here there's more and more carbon dioxide. There hasn't been a lot of photosynthesis lately. So let's see if I can go towards May. Very good. So we're in mid-May right now. So in mid-May, we get the spring. So as the spring is coming together in North America, here you're going to see that, oh, the carbon dioxide is decreasing. And therefore, you could see how nature is coming back. We have June, we're getting into July with the high end of our summer. As you can see here, there's still carbon dioxide being produced in the industrial countries right here, but more and more you could see how it is decreasing. And then we're going back to the image I had at the beginning, where it is very important to be mindful of the fact that the Earth is always trying to balance the gas content. Now you have to keep in mind that humans sometimes can affect a few things. So first of all, if we are taking away some of these larger forests in South America and in Africa, it might change a little bit how things are. But you have to be mindful that the climate change is not only due to carbon dioxide. There are also other greenhouse gases like methane, like many of the gases with nitrogen that are affecting this cycle of what climate change is all about. Now, climate change can make a difference because if I go back here to my video, you can see that. See if I can be back a little bit. So here it's all about the location of the Earth around the sun and the season. So here we are in June, it's the summer for us. So here you can see the trade winds, the tendency to go east. So we have all the rains being precipitating here, which is great. But here the wind coming on the other side from the Pacific creates a lot of rain here on the west coast, but there's a lot less rain going here because of the Rockies right here. If you think of the Pacific, lots of evaporation, but lots of precipitation happening right here. But also because of the Himalayas, what happens is that the water here precipitates on one side, and then you end up with the plateau here in China with very little rain. And the reason is that all the moisture from the atmosphere precipitated here. And as the wind is going this way, precipitation happens here. And what happened here is that there's very little ocean area here north of the equator. So what happens is that humidity precipitates here, and therefore you end up with much drier environment here in the Middle East, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and here in the northern part of Africa. And the whole reason here is that precipitation happened right here and very little opportunity for the atmosphere to actually increase its water content. So when you think of global warming, what happens is that little changes in temperature creates changes in the atmosphere. See how the atmosphere is changing? And because it's a very thin layer of gas. So what happens is that you end up with places where once in a while you get a lot more rain in one area, like in the last couple of years in Madagascar on the east side, the east coast of Africa, lots of rain happening right here, inundations happening. But other places that it's been drier, so drier and desertification. So happening in some places. So this is when it's hot. When it's colder, there's some places where they had never seen snow before, and we have snow in the winter. Other places where you have winter that may be warmer. Sometimes we have winters that are colder in places. And the whole thing is when you have it, I remember about 10, 15 years ago, we used to talk about the global warming as the key part. Global warming as a whole is what we measure, but the consequences of an increased temperature is a change in how the wind patterns are, and that's creating climate changes. So that's interesting to talk about this one. So this is the information I wanted to share with you with respect to the fall equinox this year and a few other consequences with respect to what's happening on Earth. If you've enjoyed this video, please do a thumbs up. If you have any clarification questions, put them in the comments below. I always read them, and I use your comments to answer them indeed and find some ideas for videos as we come along. On this, I'm going to put here a link to another video, and I'll see you there.